Good morning, good morning. How is everybody? Do you have your coffee? I got mine. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? Yeah, I heard Gary Johnson got stuck up on the question about Aleppo. You know, I'll tell you what I would have said. So, if you didn't hear the story, somebody asked Gary Johnson what he thought about Aleppo, a city in ISIS-held territory, I guess. And he didn't know what Aleppo was, which is pretty embarrassing. Um, but I'm wondering what would Trump have said if they'd asked the same question. uh, at some point, you have to ask yourself. Um, it looks like the media is after Trump, but think about how they could have done the same thing to him. All they had to do is ask him some obscure questions about the name of a leader of some country we care about, or the name of a city someplace, and he probably would have had a similar reaction, although I think he would have handled it better. um, Gary Johnson smokes more weed than I do. I heard he stopped to run for president, so that puts me in the lead. Why do Clintons get paid millions for speeches? Well, I'll tell you. I also get paid unreasonably large amounts of money for speeches, and the price is based on just how famous you are. So it's a name recognition thing. If you're putting on a big event and you're trying to act important and you've invited your customers and you're trying to look like you're a big deal kind of a company, then you go for the biggest name, and those people charge the most. I might do a round 2 of the Tim Ferriss podcast at some point, yes. You know what? Had I been Gary Johnson, let's say I'd been Gary Johnson, and somebody says, "What do you think about Aleppo?" and he goes, "Aleppo? What's that?" Which is the big mistake. And then the reporter says, "Are you serious? It's a city that ISIS is attacking or owns or something." Because I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about Aleppo. I would have given an answer similar to what Trump said. I would say, look, it doesn't make sense to talk about operational details during a campaign. The president will have access to different information, and the situation will be completely different by January. So I will listen to my generals. Probably the cities that matter will have changed a little bit. I didn't see the thing last night, but I heard I read a Byron York piece on it that I had kind of predicted as well, which is the problem that Clinton has is that she's going to be defending the mistakes of the past. And whether or not they're real mistakes or not, people see them that way. Trump hasn't been in office. And they're less likely to ask him about Trump University and stuff, because if you're doing a news show or you're doing a debate, you want to talk about the stuff that the people care about. And while it might be important to how you see the candidate, if you were to rank the important issues, Trump University would be like 95th in terms of the public's caring about anything. So the media will be forced to talk about things the public cares about. And Trump's history has things that matter, but we don't really care about. So Trump can say, I'm going to do great things in the future, and that will be contrasted to Clinton being accused of doing things wrong in the past that were really big and mattered, and people died, and may have had something to do with ISIS. So how do you win that comparison? How can you possibly win? Matt Lauer is a shy Trump supporter because he went easy on him. Let's talk about Hillary's earpiece. Skewered as a sexist. Based on what? Somebody's been reading my Twitter feed. Do you think Gary Johnson is done? Gary Johnson never started. Are you kidding me? Trump has 19% black vote? Where? Is that a new poll? So let's talk about Hillary's earpiece. So most of you saw that Hillary was wearing some kind of a wireless earpiece that I suppose could be a hearing aid. Or I suppose it would be 20%, 19% nationally. Is that true? Can somebody confirm that Rasmussen is saying that Trump has the support of 19% of African Americans? All right, I'm going to have to go look at that, because didn't that go up from like 0? Oh my God, is that 30% on Hispanics? These numbers can't be right. I'm going to call bullshit on all of that. That must be taken out of context, because there's no way he went from basically 0 to 19% just because he visited a black church. Could be an outlier. It's a pretty big outlier. Oh, numbers in Florida only. Okay. Well, Florida's his state, right? It's one of his home states. Not confirmed. Yeah, nationwide, I'm certainly not buying any 19% number. So let's talk about her earpiece. So I suppose there are three reasons you would have an earpiece. One is if you have a hearing problem, which I think would be no big deal for somebody that age, right? All of my friends that age, they can't hear shit. So that would just be the most normal thing. So if it's that, it's no big deal. And it could be that there are situations where she thinks she needs it more than others. That's possible. It's also possible that she's receiving tips or information or facts from her team, backstage. But it's also possible that she uses it to ask for things. So she might, apparently you can hear somebody whisper when they have those in. So if you just said to yourself, bring me a lozenge, my throat isn't good, bring me a lozenge. Then somebody, a stagehand could appear with a lozenge during the commercial break. So my thing is that it's an interesting factoid today, but until you hear what she says about it, you just can't assume that you know why it's there. It may be a problem for her, but probably not, I would say, and frankly, I think, why can't both of the candidates wear an earpiece? There's no rule against it, right? There might be, well, that's a good question. Will there be a rule about it? Oh, let me put this out here. Let's say we never find out what the earpiece is about, which seems likely because nobody ever fesses up about this sort of thing. Do the hosts of the upcoming debates have an obligation to have a rule that addresses that? Now, the rule might be they allow it, but the rule might be that they don't allow it, or that if both of them do it, it's okay, or if all of them do it, it's okay, but only one of them can't do it. So you could imagine a number of ways that the debates could adjust for that technology. If you're talking about an earpiece, I'm out of here. What? Yeah, I joked on Twitter that she was keeping a spare cough drop in her ear. Yeah, just like a handy one. 13 phones and destroyed them with a hammer. See, there again, beware of your confirmation bias, right? So you've seen my writing, you've seen what I've said, so I'm not under any illusions about the wonderfulness of really either candidate, right? But when you see a story like somebody, like an aide destroyed 13 Blackberries with a hammer, there might have been 13 Blackberries. They might not have all been hers. There might have been, several years of upgrading every year, and not knowing how to throw out the old one. I've got a box of like old hard drives and stuff I've removed from computers in the past, and I probably should physically destroy them, but I'm kind of saving them up so I do them all at once or run them under a big magnet or something. So if you tell me that she had 13 Blackberries that were destroyed, my mind automatically goes to probably some perfectly good reason for that, because you would want to destroy old devices for security. And if you'd been, let's say, using a BlackBerry since when did the BlackBerry come out? Isn't the BlackBerry like 20 years old now? I mean, having 13 phones, especially if there was a time when you had both a personal and a business BlackBerry, it doesn't even seem like that big a number, really. I mean, if you can afford them and you're upgrading and you need at least two of them, maybe the aide used one, so they had three at a time. There are lots of possibilities. My Twitter exchange with Mike Chernovich? In what sense? I don't know what you mean. I never know if I'm pronouncing his name right, by the way. That's the point. Oh, so it wasn't protocol? Yeah, I mean, that's fair, if it wasn't protocol. She destroyed them after the subpoena. Well, technically, I think she didn't do any of that. I think, if I understand what happened with the BleachBit stuff, and again, watch your confirmation bias. There's plenty of real things to be mad about. So it's Cernovich as opposed to Chernovich. Do you say that C is an S or a Ch? Cernovich? Yeah, that sounds better. So what is it that you were asking me about my Twitter exchange with him? Trump saying he acid washed her emails. It just makes you talk about it. It's, he always talks in visual. How did I know she had health problems 5 months ago? I thought everybody did. So, yeah, let's talk about the destroyed phones and the BleachBit data. My understanding is that a lawyer had ordered the tech guy to destroy the data, but he didn't. And then when the rule came over to hand it all over and not destroy things, that the aide, probably on his own, said, shit, I'm going to lose my job if I don't do this retroactively. So he probably went off and said, I'm going to take a chance. If I don't destroy this stuff, I'm fucked. If I do destroy it, I can claim I thought I was just doing my job. Everybody wins. So I think, it was a mistake that he didn't destroy them when he was first asked by the lawyer, back when nobody was asking for them to preserve it. But he tried to fix his mistake by retroactively doing what he should have done. It isn't exactly the same as Hillary Clinton destroying information to keep it from somebody. There's like a little bit of extenuating stuff going on here. And I think there's just some employee who was just covering his ass and thinking, I've got two terrible options. I don't destroy it and I'm fucked. I do destroy it and I'm also fucked. All right, so that guy had two terrible decisions, or two terrible paths, and he picked one. And I got to say, objectively speaking, if you forget about what you want as a voter, forget about what you want as a Trump supporter or whatever you are. If you're that guy, you're just trying to do your job and you're just trying to not get fired and you're trying to have a career after this, two terrible choices. So I think he picked the one least terrible. I would have asked my boss. Maybe, but your boss would have fired you. Yeah. Colin is done if he supports Trump. Are you talking about Kaepernick or Powell? You give him too much credit. I'm not giving somebody credit. I'm saying that there are legitimate possibilities that don't go to crime. They're just like some employee who just didn't have a good path and chose one. Will Johnson stay in the race? Probably. I do have plans for reparations for descendants of slaves in the United States. Wait till you hear it. So it won't. I'll tell you what it's not. It's not going to be increasing taxes on other people and transferring it directly to descendants of slaves. Like nobody's going to support that. Well, the recipients would support it, but you would never get public support for that. So it won't be anything like that. But the question is, see if you can guess where I am. Can you tell where I am? I didn't watch the forum last night. Actually, let me let me preview my reparations argument on here, and then you can tell me how far off I am. So, the idea is this: that nobody would take money out of my pocket and give it to someone else based on something that dead people did 100 years ago or 200 years ago. So you're not going to get any support for that. But as a society, we're all sort of bonded together, right? So I don't mind paying school taxes for your kid to go to school, even if I don't have kids. I mean, I might bitch about it, but in my rational mind, I'm going to say to myself, wait a minute, what's good for children will be good for me, even if they're not my children, because society operates better, etc. So if you look at school taxes, it's almost a perfect model for reparations. That is to say, because those children are being turned into better citizens, we all benefit, because their work will be what keeps us alive in our old age. So the thing with coming up with a plan for reparations for African Americans who are descended from slaves would be to find some way that the public at large could say, I don't like a direct transfer from my pocket to someone else's, but like a school tax, you say to yourself, oh, I kind of get that. Now here's why a school tax works. Now follow me on this, and if you're just joining me, I'm talking about, and I'll be writing about some ideas for reparations for slavery that have never been talked about. At least I've never heard them. But I'm going to put it in a different context. Right? The reason that you're okay with paying for other children to go to school when they're not even your kids is because it's good for society, but that's not all. There's an extra part there. The children are being measured, right? So their progress is being monitored very closely. They take tests, they get diplomas or don't get diplomas, right? So you can measure it. So let me just throw this out here, and this won't make any sense if you just joined. You have to hear the whole part of it, or else out of context this will sound a little crazy. Suppose the country is offered this option. Let's say it's in a referendum form. You could do it by state, actually. You could try it in a state. Let's say that society at large is asked to create a set of performance standards that are related to reparation. Now, the key here is that those standards have to be something that everyone agrees to, not just the people who are applying the standards, right? So let me give you an example. Suppose we said reparations will be paid if there is progress in, and I'll just throw out some ideas, a reduction in dropout rates in high school for African Americans. So let's say if the national rate of graduation for high school improved, then reparations would be paid in some fashion. In other words, and let's say the reparations are not just cash. Let's say it's in the terms of college scholarships, right? So let's say, if everything stayed the same and there's no improvement in just the African American community in terms of graduation rates, then there would be no reparations because nobody's happy. But if going back to my model of why people who don't have children are still okay paying taxes for schools, those people say, okay, there's progress, people are moving in the right direction. In a general way, I see that this is good for me because I'm part of society. Likewise, if African Americans collectively said, here's the deal. we will, on our own and with whoever's help, try to improve on these areas which society at large would very much like everyone to improve on, and we would like to improve on. So it could be something about, let's say, violence rates, black on black crime going down. Education is really the best one. So if you tie reparations to some form of educational progress, then everybody wins, right? Because do you want to live in a country where a huge percentage of, let's say whatever is the percentage of African Americans, 15%? Do you want to live in a country where 15% of your fellow country people are disadvantaged? Because that doesn't really help you. What you don't want is just to transfer your money directly to these disadvantaged groups, whoever they are, because you earned your money, right? But if you make it look more like an investment, the way a school tax is, a school tax really is an investment, right? It's not like other things. You're investing in schools because those kids grow up and you hire them and they pay your Social Security and you're investing. So right now we have a part of the economy that's underperforming. And you can talk about the reasons for that, but that's sort of a separate decision. If this is a very racist view, and anything you say about this topic will sound racist one way or the other. Should all kids get the same? In a fairness model, yes, but fairness is something that children and idiots use as a standard. The reality is, children get to go to school for free, but adults don't. How is that fair? All right, so you can make anything sound unfair, right? Women have children, women give birth and men don't. That's not fair. I mean, you can make anything sound unfair. The fact is we're all in our own situation. And if I don't do something to help you, it's going to bite me in the ass. Likewise, if you don't do something to help me, it's going to bite you in the ass. That's the whole point of a society. So if you've got one part of your society that's doing worse, and some part of that is the legacy of slavery, which you have to think, it's not unrelated, right? There's definitely, some element of, the legacy there that makes a big difference. So, yeah, I would not put it in terms of what's fair or who earned it. I think you have to reframe it as an investment and ask yourself, 20 years from now, do you want to live in a country where there are 20% African Americans and they're really, really pissed off and they haven't gotten the education that anybody would want them to have? I mean, do you want to live in that world? If you do, just do nothing. But if you want to improve things, maybe consider some ideas. Well, there are no Dilbert ties. The other thing I would recommend is that any idea about reparations or education or anything that Black Lives Matter might suggest, you could probably test in a city or in a school. And why not? Did you see, do you remember a story long ago? There was some millionaire who visited an inner city school, and he hadn't planned to do it, I think. That's the story anyway, maybe he had. But he was just there to give a mentoring, inspirational talk. And at the end of it, I forget who it was, but you might remember this. At the end of the talk, he basically just said, fuck it. I'm going to pay for every one of your college educations. You just have to get into college. So that part's you. I'm just going to pay for every one of you. So I just removed every problem that you have structurally to succeed. And what happened? Just about every kid got through the class and got into some kind of a college. So there is reason to believe that money makes a difference if applied smartly. Yeah, I think that was on 60 Minutes. Those stories, that was Michael Scott. That was from a movie, wasn't real. It might have become a movie, but it was a real thing eventually, or initially. It's about culture, not money. Well, here's the thing. Culture doesn't come out of nowhere. culture comes from history, right? I have a culture that's similar to how my, pink-skinned relatives had. I didn't make it up on my own. Black kids don't value education. Well, whatever the problem is, why don't we run a test and just work on that variable and see if it makes a difference. So if there's a claim on here, so American woman said just now that she thinks black kids don't value education. Now, I don't have an opinion on that, but you could test it and you could find out what do we do to help them value it in this city or in this school. That seems something you could set up a test and see how you improve it. The Irish were the first slaves. Yeah, see, as soon as you get into any notion of fairness, everything falls apart. Because nothing's fair and nothing can be fair. But you can invest in things. So if I said to you, let's invest heavily in the Irish community, it probably wouldn't be a big bang for the buck, even if everything went well. But if I said to you, invest in the group that's not only not providing to society, but they're causing a drain in resources from other parts of the society, if you can fix that, that's a much bigger deal, right? To kill the welfare state. I see where people are going with that, but it's hard to get from here to there. But if you invest in stocks and you don't invest in people, you're going to be living in a country with a bunch of money that you don't want to live in. Yeah, I think there's a step where you have to dig into the details and really find out if there's if it's a race problem or, what elements are related to the race problem and what isn't and all that. You're not investing, you're bribing. That's what all business is. Everybody's bribing somebody to do something. I'm not suggesting equality. You didn't hear that from me. I'm suggesting that you invest in some parts of society where you can get the biggest bang for the buck. Ethnophobia. Yeah, I don't like to make any of this about the Democrats versus the Republicans. I think that's a trail that leads to nothing because it just becomes a partisan bickering thing. I'd rather approach it from an investment standpoint, which is there a way to do a small trial on some ideas? And after you've tried several ideas, can we roll them out bigger? And if we did, would it pay a dividend to society where everybody's better off? I think we could probably get there. To bribe all underperforming communities. Don't we do that? In general, don't underperforming communities get more resources than overperforming communities? Maybe that's the opposite. I could be wrong about that. Investment is work like dark. You're right. Can it be done to the whole population? Well, it wouldn't be called reparations then. There's a lot of psychology involved in this, right? So it's not just does it make sense, but what can you get away with? What is credible? And if I said to you, I'm going to make a plan and it applies to the African American community, and they will benefit directly if, let's say, their high school graduation rates go up, that there'd be some kind of reparation things kicking in. I would be okay extending that to other groups, kind of in a smart way, not universally. Because the thing is, you really can't argue that. So here's my three things. Two things, three things. You can't argue that anything is like the Holocaust. All right. There's, I'm sure there were things like it in terms of a lot of people got killed, but its effect on our psyche and its sort of importance in the world, there's just nothing like it. Slavery is the other thing, right? You could say those poor Irish and those poor Chinese immigrants and all that, but the thing is, there's really nothing like the legacy of slavery. There's nothing you can compare that to. So when you start saying, what about the Irish? I hear what you're saying, and I've got Irish blood in me too. But in terms of its importance in society, it just isn't there. You want to look out my window? See if you can guess where I am. My family fought against slavery. Do I have to pay? No, you're thinking in terms of reparations. Do you have to pay school taxes if you don't have any kids? Of course you do. It has nothing to do with what you did. Well, somebody knows. Yeah, it's Half Moon Bay. But interestingly, they do have bagpipes and stuff, and so they kind of treat it like it's Scotland. I think even the golf course is a little Scottish looking. My future in-law's place. Now I'm in Half Moon Bay in California. All right, I'm going to sign off. I got some stuff to do. I don't play golf. I'm just here for a day. By the way, I'm going to London in October. So if there's anybody in London who's looking for a corporate speaker for an event, you should contact me. It's going to be October someday between the 6th and the 12th. I could give a talk in London. I'll be there anyway. With your bigotry. I will go brush my hair. Do you know a speaker? How much do I charge? I don't want to say that publicly. I'm very expensive. I don't get Hillary Clinton members, but depending on the location and who I'm talking to, it could be anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000. Group out of that nutsack. Thank you. $1,000 for speech. No, pretty expensive. $50 to have brunch with your folks. No, I don't have anything public planned in London. It's just I've just never been there. Yes, Eddie, I plan to do just that. Yeah, not too many inner city kids. Don't go to London. All right, I'm going to take off. Everybody have an excellent day.